Today I'll be giving you a little tour of my hatchery. This is my incubator. It's an RCOM 20 Max. It's a really high-end incubator that's used for incubating exotic bird eggs such as emus or toucans or parrots. And I actually will be incubating and hatching macaw eggs after these emus are done. So the reason I'm incubating emu eggs currently is because it's winter and not much else is laying, but the emu, its breeding season is between November and February, so these are basically the only eggs you'll find around this time of year. Emu eggs are notorious for being very difficult to hatch. Most emu farmers or breeders only get about a 50% success rate when hatching emu eggs, so I'm very happy to know that all 6 of my eggs have been developing properly. And the way you test an emu egg to see if it's developing a chick properly is different than how you would test any other kind of egg. You cannot candle emu eggs, which means you cannot shine a light through the eggshell and see if there's a network of blood vessels developing or see if there's an embryo moving around inside because of those thick, dark shells. They're very, very thick, and the dark green is impossible to see through. One thing you have to do is weigh the eggs every day to make sure that the eggs are losing the appropriate amount of weight. During incubation, an emu egg should lose about 15% of its original mass, so I weigh my eggs every day to make sure that they are on track. And egg C has been losing the perfect amount of weight through incubation. Eggs D and E were losing too much weight during incubation, so I put tape on them to block up the pores and prevent water from leaving the eggs so quickly. What you can also do is, once an egg, I'd say, is about 20 to 25 days old, if you leave it out on a counter for a few minutes, parts of the egg will start to cool. The fat end, which has the air bubble, will cool down because there's no liquid in there. And then the pointy end will cool down if it's an infertile egg or a rotten egg. But if there's a chick developing, it will produce some of its own body heat, and the tip will stay warm. So if you put your hands or fingertips on either side of the egg, this end, the fat end, will definitely cool down, but if this one also cools down, it means your egg isn't developing. Another thing you do when you're hatching emu eggs is you start to tap test. You take a metal pole or spoon or something like that, and you tap the air bubble side of the egg, and it makes a funk for most of incubation. But once the egg has sounded or internally pipped, which means the chick inside has punctured the air bubble in order to acclimate its lungs and prepare to hatch, and you tap on the air bubble once it's been popped, it will sound really hollow and tinny. So at that point, you move the eggs to the hatcher once they have internally pipped or sounded. I have my hatcher set up in here. It's just a towel-lined heating pad with a heat lamp, and I have a little thermometer to gauge temperature. It doesn't have to be exact in the hatcher since they should only be in here for 24 hours maximum. And once they hatch and they've dried off, you move them to a brooder. The coolest part about hatching emu eggs, and the reason I'm 100% certain that all of my eggs are developing properly, is that at around, I'm going to say 25 to 35 days, they actually start to wiggle. So if you have the egg out on a counter and you whistle at it, and you watch closely, the egg will actually start to vibrate, move around, and of course, the more developed the embryo is, the bigger the wiggles are. So I'm going to see if I can get egg C to do a little dance for us. Here I have my post-hatch supply. It's a pretty basic toolkit for emus. They don't require as much attention as, say, parrots. We have betadine, which you swab the navel of the bird once they hatch to prevent yolk sac infections. We have basic Pedialyte, which is fed to every chick once they hatch to make sure they stay hydrated, and that's administered through just a basic hand-feeding syringe. We have styptic powder to help if there's any bloody navels after hatch. Just have distilled water to create humidity in the incubator. And I have a clamp because sometimes a bird will hatch without having absorbed its yolk sac. And if the yolk sac cannot be absorbed after hatch, usually if there's just a tiny bit, it'll suck it in after it's hatched. But if it's too big, you have to clamp it off, cut it, and then go ahead with your styptic powder and betadine solution to make sure that it doesn't get infected and that it heals up nicely. I also keep a few syringes with needles on hand in case a chick were to develop an infection. It's better to administer antibiotics intravenously because they're received more quickly that way. And then of course I have the emu food, which is just a low protein blend of chick starter, non-medicated, and this is what they'll eat. This is my business planner. I keep all my information in here about the emus or whatever kind of bird I have in the baiter at the time. I monitor the weight loss and I log that in here every day. I also log at what time and in what direction I turn the eggs every day. And of course I have my countdown to hatch in here. And if a buyer ever has a special request, if for example they want their bird to be DNA sexed to guarantee they get a male or female, I'll keep test results in here, special requests like that. Keep track of profits, keep track of expenditures, all that stuff goes in this book. This one moves a lot. Yeah.
So you just like buy an incubator online?
Yep.
Mama Klein. So, Leah, Miss Klein, what is your relationship to my client? I'm his wife. Soon to be ex-wife. Things are just being finalized.